Mr. Richardson, last week members received a briefing from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Coast Guard, and the Army Corps of Engineers on the ongoing response to the Texas floods. And I know we're still in the response mode with over 130 fatalities and 100 people still missing tragically. However, we do not know when the next disaster is going to happen. And so I know that we're looking for after-action reports, but I think I need to turn to some of the questioning, or at least a testimony today, because it countervails what we heard yesterday or last week directly from FEMA, from Mr. Turry, when I asked him particularly about response times to the call center. Now, we understand from Mr. Turry that when there is a disaster occurring, that disaster is the one that receives precedence. So you might be getting calls into the call center from across the country, but the ones outside the disaster response area are put kind of behind the ones that are a priority, which is the disaster that's occurring now. And in that case, wait times were significantly reduced based on what we're hearing from the ranking member here. And look, we just want to have the correct information. We don't want to say that anybody is distorting the truth, but we got to make decisions on the correct information. So the information we got from Mr. Turry countervails what we're hearing right here in the committee today. And so I'm hoping you can elucidate us as to what you know about the call center response time. We also know that people from around the country that call and don't receive an immediate pickup from the call center hang up, but those are still counted as calls into the response center, and they're aggregated into the response time. So can you, as well, we also heard that FEMA did not receive a request from the state until Monday. So there was no request prior to Monday for FEMA to get involved in the disaster response recovery effort. And so I'd like you to elucidate, if you could, any of that information that we received from Mr. Turry last week.
So thank you for your question, Chairman Perry. First, to the call center. So anytime that there is a disaster, we surge support to the call center to address those calls. And that's what we did. And so the disaster happened on Friday, and then there was Saturday and Sunday. And for most people, they don't call into the call center over the weekend. They would call in on the Monday. And indeed, we had the surge support available all weekend, and when they came in on Monday, of course, there was a surge. Now, as Mr. Turry very likely told you, all calls were answered within 3 minutes, and no call, or in 3 minutes, and no calls beyond 10 minutes. So it's from 3 to 10 minutes. And the vast majority of phone calls were answered, and the questions were addressed. Now, regarding I think the next part of the question is the support on the ground in Texas on, you said Monday, correct?
Well, that's what we understand from Mr. Turry is when FEMA received the request from the state of Texas. FEMA doesn't go unrequested, as the federal government. The requirement is to wait for the state to request and then be prepared to respond.
So Texas, first of all, on the deck in Texas on the 4th of July, there was a national urban search and request team. We have 28 of those teams all over the country. One of them is in Texas. So in College Station, Texas, that FEMA-funded, FEMA-trained, and FEMA-equipped asset was already on the deck on 4 July. And there was also a federal coordinating officer at the EOC, Emergency Operations Center, in Austin. And regarding the request on Monday, that is correct. So the disaster declaration didn't come in until Sunday, and then Monday they requested, and the support was there within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours. Is there a standard by which is set for FEMA on the response time? Is 24 hours? It seems, from my standpoint, that seems like a long time to wait. So just tell me if there's a standard. When we had a medevac call in Iraq, as the commander of the task force, if the aircraft wasn't airborne within 8 minutes of the call, it was a call directly to the Secretary of Defense. What is the response time, if you know, required for FEMA on such a response?
Thank you for the question. Once again, they get there as quickly as possible. Those two teams came from, I believe it was Tennessee, no, it was Missouri and Colorado, and they get there as soon as they possible because they've got to move.
I understand, but so my time has expired, but is there a minimum response time? I'm just asking for purposes of trying to make things better. So does FEMA have a minimum response time once the request is made to respond, like within an hour or within 24 hours? Or what's the...
Well, they respond immediately, and they, as soon as they get the word, they move. So they respond
But there's no
immediately.
requirement that you know of? There's no requirement?
They get there as fast as possible. I don't know if there's an hour number, but they get there as fast as
If
they
you could
possibly
get back to the committee with that information, that would be helpful. With that, my time has expired. Mr. Richardson, in previous questioning, it was implied that FEMA is, I think, uncaring. And many of us on either side of the aisle here have certainly plenty of, I think, justified criticism of FEMA. But in regard to the Texas fire, or Texas flood and the search and rescue effort, is my understanding in the briefing last week that the governor requested the Coast Guard, indeed close by, one unit located in Houston. Neither unit could get to the site of the flooding and actually do search and rescue or recovery operations due to weather. And as a matter of fact, one of the members of the Coast Guard has been highly decorated for his actions on the ground there. Can you, look, like I said, we just want to make sure that we level set here and we understand what happened, what FEMA's role was, what FEMA was prepared for, but what was actually used by the governor. If FEMA was stationed on site, but the governor didn't want FEMA there because he wanted to use the Coast Guard because of a pre-existing relationship or because of capability or location, that's important to know now. Can you provide or shed any light on that issue?
Definitely, and thank you for the question. So let's back up. So from the second that I found out about the horrible disaster in Texas, what I was doing was coordinating, okay, from where I was coordinating to ensure that these assets were being applied to the disaster. Now, Texas Task Force 1, which is a FEMA paid for and equipped asset, was working also with the emergency state manager, but they also have a direct relationship with the Coast Guard, CBP, Public Health, and the Texas National Guard. So there were other forces on the ground that were either federal forces like Texas Task Force 1, which is a national, and then there was also other DHS assets. And through Secretary Noem's extraordinary leadership, my coordination, we made sure they were available to the Emergency Operations Center.
Appreciate the answer.